Hello Gypsters, my name's Gav. Welcome to another one of my videos. Today it's the second instalment on painting this guy. As you can see, this is a bit back to front because I've already painted the orange on him. I just wanted to say the orange is done on this figure now. It'll be the hat and shoes next. I think we'll leave and neckerchief, and we'll leave the face and the hair and that to the last one. So there'll be two more. Probably might do three if I include a base in it. I'm not sure. It's not going to be a fancy base. It'll just be an MDF base with some tufts on, really. So, you know, is it really worth showing? But definitely be a couple more videos left in this series. As I said, I'll set it through the video. I've called it beginner series. After the first painting video I did the other day on the blue jacket, there isn't really that much that I can say extra about this figure. It's more or less becoming a paint along with Gav. I will be doing other figures in this series, just ones I can find out of my pile, or even if something takes my fancy I might get and say, well, let's paint this guy. It can be really haphazard what figures they are. It really just, I don't have a lot of figures in my stash, to be honest with you. I've got a lot of figures, but they tend to be other people's, which I'm sure they wouldn't mind me doing. But I don't want to be, you know. I thought, oh, I'll do it. I haven't got any English Civil War figures, and I thought, oh, I'll do an English Civil War figure next. And I thought, well, that's only about 20 years before this guy. So yeah, there'll be something. I don't want to do a Napoleonic figure just yet, unless there's a real call for it, only because I'm painting Napoleonics all the time, so doing yet another figure, it'd probably get a bit samey, but we'll find something. So I think that's about it. Let's get down to the bench and get painting. Right guys, thanks for joining me at the bench as we stare down drone-like from a great height. We obviously see the top of our figure there and paintbrushes, so I just thought we'd quickly go through what we need. Assortment of paintbrushes are your choice. Again, the ones I'll be using will range from, I'm just reading them out as I see them: 0, 3, 0, 10, 0, which I doubt I'll use on this one until the face, and a number 1. They're just what I happen to be painting my Napoleonic commission with, so yeah, they just happen to be on my go-to brushes for the bench. They're series, I'll just make sure because I haven't been using them that long, series 33 from Rosemary and Co, and they're Kolinsky Sable. I find that these clean up, they're so far holding the points very well. Just see a slight hair adrift there, but that's fine. Yeah, they hold the point real well so far. They take enough paint where you need it. They're longer bristles, so they don't go all up the ferrule really quickly. As I say, try and keep it, you know, your paint to the bottom third of the brush really if you can. Keep your brushes going a bit longer, so you'll need those. Paints, we're going to, obviously our figure, which we have. Say hello to the little guy. What else do we need? Oh, kitchen towel. As I said to you before, this is how I do it. As I take paint off the wet palette, I'll just touch it. The big lines and that you see on there, that's just where I've done a final clean off of the brush when I've put it in some brush cleaner and that. And the bigger splodges, they're just explaining your kitchen towel, but it's a little map in itself. Yeah, the tiny little bits, that's where I've been wiping paint off. I always do that, and it'll stop you getting that tears effect. We had one on this guy, which I think was at the top of his arm, which you can almost see there. I've turned it into more of a highlight, but I also dulled it down a bit. But yeah, so just wipe a bit of excess paint off onto your you're not trying to go for a dry brush effect. It'll just a quick wipe. This is something I can't really teach you unless I happen to be right next to you. It's really something you've got to find out for yourself, but just give it a slight dab on there. It'll take that excess paint off. I'll say the other spludges is just where I've been wiping the ends of the bottles, and where I've just been dragging out the brushes when I've been cleaning them. But I always do that. You can, you'll see painters as well with loads of paint all over the fingers because it's just as quick to do it on your finger. That's up to you. The only problem you do get with that sometimes is if the wet paint ain't dried up enough, you very occasionally you'll obviously put it on with your finger on the figure or a different figure, and you'll have the wrong colour paint where you don't need it. Right, we're going for orange on this guy, and let's move these out of the way a bit. Let's get this guy a bit closer now. Right, we're going for orange on this guy. I've not done any work to the blue at all. As I said to you guys, what I tend to do is once I've got the figure to a basic place where I'm happy with, I then go back around the figure and just, if I feel that the jacket needs more highlights or more shadows, I do that, and the same with anything else on the figure, including the face if I think so. So we're going for orange. I'll just move this aside for a moment. I'll have to remix these a bit because I mixed them a few minutes back. We've got our wet palette, right? This one here is just deep yellow, and actually it's already an orange, which is the bright orange from Vallejo again. So that's that one. This one is a mixture of scarlet, because it was just on hand, and again deep yellow. So that's that one. So that's a mix we've gone to make from, to make our own orange up, in other words. So we get our trusty stirrer. As you can see, it's quite watery. Might even be a tad watery, but we'll go with that for now. And that's our more brighter one, because I want to try and put a couple of different oranges on this. I'm also going to try the shadow flesh for watered down and putting in some shaded areas. It may work, it may not, but that's where I'm going for on the, probably put in some of that. So where are we? So we can shade the wool stockings, and obviously in the darkest recesses underneath the cuffs there, and obviously other shadow areas. That might work, it might not. I could just blow up in my face and I'm having to repaint it. But first we're going to need, you could apply that straight away. Another good orange, by the way, while we're talking orange, it's a red really, but amaranth red, so orange red really. That's a lovely colour. Even on grey though, you probably need 2 coats of that to get a base coat, if that's where you're going to go with. I thought on this one, what did Gav think? I'm not sure if I might not go with a medium flesh as a base coat on that, or I might go a sand colour. You could go like medium flesh or one of the flesh colours, but obviously a bit darker than lighter, or maybe like a yellow ochre. We might try both as a bit of an experiment. Right, so I'm going to use we'll use our number 1 brush, and we'll use some, what is it, basic, medium flesh tone. Now this is one of the few times I don't see the, right, let's get this out of the way so we can actually, sorry, it keeps wanting to roll we're on a bit of a roll here. Right, we've got to fit, I want to work quick because this is acrylic, we don't want it drying on the tip, but we've got a bit of paint on there. That's about as far up the tip. Now normally I'd wipe this off, but when it's coming down on a base coat first, that's about the time I don't, because you're working it round where you want to paint, so it's not as if it's going to leave a particularly a pear-shaped or a teardrop of paint where it probably will show up more. Am I on camera there yet? Sorry, I don't have this hooked up to my computer. I can only see it through the viewer, so I can't, like many people trying to do these, it's not as easy as it looks. Right, now so I've done about 3 applications of paint there. I'd normally do about 2, that's talking, and then I wash my brush out. make sure you get all the moisture off, and make sure you get it off the ferrule if you can. That's the metal piece on the paintbrush. Right, we don't want to go over that too much. As I said to you on the last video, you don't want to be painting wet, unless you're blending. You don't want to be putting wet paint on top of wet paint, because it will crumb up. Right, let me move these nice brushes where they're not going to get wrecked. Sorry, I'm talking through a paintbrush at the moment. I'm doing things like I would do on my bench. Sorry, talking through a paintbrush. Right, while gripping a paintbrush in my teeth. Sometimes I'll put a second coat on these type of bases. It depends in what it is, for what reason you want to do it. As I say, when I do another figure, and there will be different figures coming up, I will try and put them on a cork bung maybe, so my hand's not always screening the figure. As I say, this is another impromptu one really, because I need to be getting on with the commission, but I know that obviously I'm only getting this done in stages, and it's not fair for you guys to wait weeks just to see a pair of socks and a jacket get painted. so not that I think you're all going to be on tenterhooks, but I think that's about it there. So that should hopefully give us a nice base for our orange, but I'm going to do obviously all the areas first. So I did put a bit of the in fact I'll use this as a base on these trousers underneath. We've got like the garters that keep the socks up, I think, as well. When you're doing a few of these, because the sculptors I don't think always particularly show that it's socks, don't forget a lot of the poorer soldiers, they might well have just had bare legs, you know. So sometimes if you're doing a unit, you know, you can show either a bloke with no, you can show him with no socks, with socks, or even one sock on and one not. You know, these guys didn't have a lot of money, and even when they did get a clothing allowance, it was normally deducted from the pay. So if you lost one or tore one or all the rest, whatever, you know, you'd be fined for it, or, you know, taking out your next pay or whatever. So they'd often be thieving off each other, or off dead bodies or prisoners, which were always a good. We've got a bit under there, but I'm not too fussed about that, because I've got to black that out later on. So I can live with that. Now, I don't bother doing highlights and shades on a base, obviously. Some people will do. You'll see the zenithal highlighting, or even just putting shadows and lights in by using an airbrush, or you can do it with a brush just as easy. You know, showing your highlighted areas and shades before you paint. But I just tend to think on a Wargames figure, it's not really that important for me to go through the you know, the rigmarole if I'm using my airbrush, to then have to clean that out before I do anything else. You know, it's I'm quite happy just painting it from a standing start, if you get what I'm saying. Now, I've been, for want of thinking of what else to call it, I was saying, you know, painting for beginners. Now, there isn't, I can show you bits more, but I'm loath to do like blending and glazing. I don't think I'm that particularly good at it to give other people lessons in it. So, I mean, I can do it, but most people, unless they're going to be doing display figures, it's not really something that, in my opinion, you're going to say, unless you want to have the wow effect for photographs or something, it's not really that your average guy or gal, I don't think, put my head in the noose, they're going to be that phased with. Now this is the yellow ochre. I don't know, I've not used this particular, in this combo before, so if it makes any difference at all, I'd have no idea yet, but we might as well just try it. But yeah, I'm just going to start painting figures, I think, after this one. It'll just be, and we'll name whatever the figure happens to be, and just call it a paint along or something, I don't know. It's just more than, I would say, more like entertainment value for you guys, if you can call it that. It's just somebody waffling on in the background as you do your own hobbies. Of course, you can always listen to your 80s synth pop, or you can listen to Gav ramble on about figures. Yeah, I knew that would happen. I'm more careful than that normally. And I haven't got any. Have I got a dark blue? I think I might have one dark blue on my palette already, which I might be able to clean that up with. We're going to put a bit of dark, like the rubber black's like a brown black, and we're going to be putting that in there anyway to put some really dark shadows in, so that might take it up. So I wouldn't always rush to clean up a figure until you've sat back and you can see exactly what you're doing with it. So let me just wash my brush. So this guy's going to have like a shadow area under there and a shadow area on the top, just to show like the deeper creases. The only bit of orange that I won't be doing on this round is when I do the hat. He's got a. I did a great job cleaning him up. There's a small bit of mold line there. Oh well. Sometimes you can actually. Oh, so the hat. Let's stop on topic, Gav. Yeah, the hat's got a bit of silk around the edge and around the actual dome part of the hat, whatever that bit's called. Is it crown? Something like that. Sorry if I'm out of shot. I'm looking down at the moment. Yeah, I'm getting mess all over the place now. And I said to you guys before, it don't help that although I've got all these different lights set up, it's not actually the best way I work. So I sometimes find it hard to see what the heck I'm painting. Right. So these are our bases to put our orange on. You tend to find you can put orange on, but it'll take you a lot more to work with it a lot of the times, or you'll be tempted then to put it on really thick. So you put something like that in colour, and that'll help you apply your oranges. Right, I've done the one leg in the orange mix that I've made up myself from the yellow and the red. Now, as I said when I showed you it on the palette, it is a bit more waterier than I probably would have liked, but I don't really want to mix, because it's a homemade mix. Trying to get it a bit thicker consistency will probably end up just mucking the colours around. It's going to take a couple of coats, which it would have done anyway. As I say, this is really in one sense, our first base coat of the orange. It's just that we've gone over the flesh just to make it a bit more easier on the orange. Right, guys. I wanted to try this orange, this bright orange out that I've, or bright orange mix I've put on. The stockings, the socks, whatever you want to call them, and the trousers have had the 2 coats of orange on them, and the jackets, apart from obviously 2 coats in the shaded areas, which still, as you can see, isn't. It's orange, but there's not really any definition in there yet. I'm just going to paint the cuffs now with the same orange, just so you can see it go on really. Just put a bit on there. So I don't normally have I normally have that piece of towel in front of me, but it keeps getting in camera shots. So as I say, what I'm just trying to do is show a bit of difference between, rather than have everything looking the same orange, which it probably wouldn't have been in real life. So we just want to show a bit of difference. It's all the little tiny differences that changes, in my opinion, a figure. You know, just brings it up from just an average figure. You don't have to be a fantastic painter, but if you just do some different details on your figure compared to the figure next to it from somebody else, it personalises your figure, if that makes sense. And even if you were doing a gun crew, I know it's all extra work, but these are, like say, these wore the orange and the blue for obviously to honour the Prince of Orange, or King William of Orange, by but on the whole, the artillery was going over to the red a lot in this period, so you could mix the battery up with you know, one guy in red, or you can even, don't be afraid to paint like a brown on, you know, uniforms didn't last 5 minutes, you know, there wasn't a great procurement process, you know, the quartermaster. So again, as I say, these would literally, you know, I'm not saying they're all thieves and vagabonds, but they'd literally, you know, drag off the back of some poor civilian his jacket if they didn't have one. So, you know, make your battery look a bit different. But even if you want to do a full, you know, you want to have more uniformity to it, lighten one bloke's jacket up blue but lighter than maybe the other 2, and you know, make the one bloke might have these more brighter cuffs, and another guy might have the dark, you know, a darker orange. It's all little things like that can bring your figure up. You know, if you're painting a, you know, a group of figures of the same like historical genre, or, you know, as I say, one artillery battery. I'm all over the place with this fella, because I can't say I don't talk when I paint, because I'm usually rumbling on to whatever you guys have put up on a video, or, you know, I'm usually chatting away to the video of whatever's going on. As before though, I'll go off camera in a bit and just go around the figure itself, just tidying up where I think it needs tidying up. Now, as I say, at the moment they're not, I'm not going to say they're going to look particularly great when I finish, but at the moment I don't know if the lights, I'm looking through this lens and it's making them all literally look the way obviously the camera adjusts itself. The orange looks exactly the same on both, and it's not. But what I was going to say to you guys is shy lights, shadows. Come on, shadow man, right? Shadows can be as important as highlights. You know, don't always think, oh, I've got to highlight. You know, just keep bringing it up to. You know, don't always put your, you know, get some type of definition to it first, and then put a shadow in, and you'll be surprised how it will give you like a guide to put your highlights in afterwards. So we're going to have a go on that. I'm going to do some of it off camera because I haven't actually used this over orange before, and I need to think a bit about what I'm doing. So I'll still leave enough for you guys to see me do it, but I'll pick a part of the uniform first to have a go on. Right, let's see if we can get a bit closer. Here we go. Come on, whoa. Is it going to? Does it want to focus? Right, here we go. Yeah, I've put some shade in with the shadow flesh. And let's just put this guy down for a second. Nails all grubby. You'll have to forgive me. Oh, a bit more would help, Gav. So if I'm putting, and this depends on different paints, but if I'm putting like a shadow area in, that's roughly the consistency in this colour that I'd like to see. So you can still see through my nail. That's roughly what I'd be looking at, and that's what's gone in. Well, I say roughly, it's what's been on the palette, so that's what's gone on the figure. When I'm doing this, it's probably more, wash consistency than glaze. You could call it a very heavy glaze. We're going to go under there with some shadows, although I'll probably put some rubber black under there afterwards. So that's gone over the socks. Now we could find that this this more or less brings this bright orange mix when I do it in a minute to look exactly like the one we've just done, which means this orange experiment will fall flat on my face. But to be honest with you, that's how, as you imagine I was going to say, that's how we all learn. You can write your recipes down, probably a good idea. I don't most of the time, I just don't think about it. So let's have a go on this waistcoat. So I've dried some of that. Always dry a fair amount off of when it's of a watered down consistency. Don't worry if everything gets too dark. You think, oh my life, because you can obviously put more highlights onto that. It's not too much of a problem. Put it mainly in the shadow areas that you think a shadow should be. Needs a bit more under the jacket. The problem is I'd like to do like a rubber black shade under the jacket, but at the same time we need to show enough orange under there because that's what I'm using. As I say, if you've gone from the first video, I'm looking at that Osprey book for inspiration, which is roughly, off the top of my head, the British Army in the 1600s. We've got a great bit there that I've hardly touched at all as usual, but so we'll put extra shadow in there and try and make it work for us. We'll have a go on these cuffs. So far we haven't put any what you'd call highlights in at all. That's not saying we won't, but we've got a nice decent shadow here, so we've gone from a light down to this darker shadow, and it's meant that we've not really so far had to work any highlights into it yet. Probably will do, but I'll say it's a nice figure, this one. It's one of the Foundry figures. Stephen did say, I did actually put on the description, I did know it was a Foundry figure, but I kept saying Citadel. I apologise for that, it is a Foundry figure. As I say, I just bought a group of, it said officers and excisemen. You could call this guy anything of the period, really. going a bit heavy. I didn't wipe the brush off there because I wanted the excess paint. Sometimes, for all that you'll hear me say, sometimes I'll go completely and do the opposite, but there's usually a reason behind it, unless I've just purely forgot. But on this case, we're using excess paint to get in some of the nooks and crannies of the cuff that's probably going to have some really dark shaded areas anyway, so probably a waste of time. But go around these cuffs. Dogs are out in force today around the neighbourhood, so if you do hear any, I apologise. I had some on the other video that I was playing back that I'd done. Unfortunately, like a lot of the UK, we live in small houses in close-knit tight estates with everybody's built on top of each other, so you get to hear all the noise that goes on. Hit that with that. Again, I've had the trusty hairdryer out. We're going to put that on again off camera. Right, now, so that's our figure with no, what I would call no highlights done to it whatsoever. As I say, the camera on this white background will obviously make it look different. I won't be doing the buttons on this guy yet. We'll leave all that till we do the shoe buckles as well. Right guys, I've just been doing a bit of experimenting. You find when you've got really light colours like this, you can't really bring them up too much further. You need to be going down into more shadow areas than you do bringing them up, if that makes sense, because eventually you start running out of ideas, and then you start throwing white into everything, and in a desperate attempt to try and get the orange looking, more highlights in different areas. What I've done here, as I say, is we put that shadow, once we've done our base coat, we put our shadow areas in, which gives us quite a dark shadow. But because of the colour, it mixes well with orange, so that gives us quite dark areas. I've then put mixed some 50-50 amaranth with which is this yellow, basic deep yellow, and I've gone over in highlighted areas which you won't really see. I've then, which is probably show up more, especially against a hard shadow area, some basic yellow neat. So as you can see there on the brush, let's see if we are in, there we go. So we've got basic yellow going straight on top now. Now what we don't want is obviously it to be looking completely yellow, but it will just give us a bit more highlight and shadow areas definition. Then I'm going to hit it again with another shadow flesh if in areas I think need it, and then I'm going to put some rubber black, which you've got to be sparing with, but I also want to use it to cut some definition areas in the demarcation lines in the actual sculpt itself. Sorry, I'm resting on that kitchen paper because in the end I just found it easier to use that as I normally would do. I actually normally rest my hands on some packing foam actually, and then the kitchen paper goes on top. Obviously the blue background here is just to hide my untidy workbench. it was being a shipyard last night. I'm making a 1 in 350 Royal Navy Type 23 frigate at the moment. And tomorrow, while spraying the first unit, the commission of first layer of varnish over, I'll be putting some varnish over the FT-17. 1/35 scale tank that I'm doing, and I've got 4 figures painted for Mez's Minis, which I shall do. Should have been this weekend, but I've been juggling other things. But I've got a video of that coming up as well. So we've now, that's highlight wise, that's about as much as I'm happy to go with the orange. So we're just going to use our shadow flash again. Just put it in some areas, again without completely covering over what we've done. This is in shade under there, so we want to leave it in shade. And again, like the jacket, there will be a final clean up. I was half thinking to myself, I have to say, and I won't do the buttons in that, but it's just something I don't like. I prefer doing, if I'm doing brass or even non-metallic, I'll tend to do most of it in one go. Just a bit of amaranth under there, because I can see. Right, so that's our orange. I'm just going to break out the rubber black and see if we can mess it all up now and put black over everything. But I just want to put some demarcation lines in it, so we'll be back in a minute. Right guys, I've been going around lining out some of the figure. Some of the bits I wouldn't normally do. I just wanted to show you the effect. So take the cuffs, that's the word I was after. Normally I would have painted the hand, and then with this watered down, where is it? Rubber black, which is like a blacky grey with a bit of brown in it. You could just as easily use a dark brown or a black brown. But I just go underneath the cuffs slightly just to put a shadow area. It's often called definition, defining parts of the figure. They don't always stand up to close inspection, because obviously then you've got black lines everywhere. In fact, that's why I call it black lining. I just prefer to put it onto a figure where I think shadows are going to be, and then in itself it tends to break up the figure then. You'll still see some overpaint, which will need some dark blue in it. But yeah, that's what I'd roughly do with it. If you've got collars, cuffs, put a bit of shadow area in them. It just helps show that that there's a gap between the material and the hand. Say, I'll just do. I've done them roughly round the shoes, but again, I wouldn't normally add that until after I've painted the shoes. But I just wanted to show putting the shadow area where the tongue of the shoe goes up there. Put a bit of shadow area in there. So it's not officially black lining, but it just gives you shadow areas. I've done it fairly roughly and inconsistent at the moment, but when we've done we'll do the hat and the trousers together, and probably the neck chief. I've added a bit of the same colour to any buttons, but I'd prefer to do those as it's just metallic rather than non-metallic. I'll do those all in one go. I just wanted to do one bit of black lining just to show you. So where's our grotty thumb? It's so thin and so watered down, you're probably not going to see it. So that's roughly what we're looking like. It's quite watered down. Wipe the excess again off your brush onto the towel so it doesn't pool anywhere. And on this guy we're gonna go down between the jacket and like the vest. Well, I always forget what the blooming called. We see, no we can't, Gav. There we go. Because it's quite thin paint, it might take a couple of applications, but again, that's not a problem. I've already done one here between the folds of the material. Again, you can always clean it up with some of the other paint if you so wish. Normally, if it's this thin, it's not going to be as stark if you've got to paint through it. Well, it looks like we're going to have to now because I've just put some directly onto the vest, but never mind. Put a bit. Are we seeing that? Yep. Darken this area a bit here. We'll put some on that deeper crease down there as well. It's a very nice colour this, providing you thin it down well. It's very nice for shadow areas. Again, it might need to be mucked around with. We'll probably have to put a bit more in there off camera. Let's see what I'm doing properly. The only thing that didn't really work was where these garters are that keep up the stockings. I did put black lining around there and it was too stark, so I've gone over it, as you can see, with the shadow areas again, and on top of that black lining, or brown lining, it's actually worked now, in my opinion. But yeah, around the socks, the shoes and that, it might change yet. It depends when I work on the shoes the next time. The buttons, as I say, I'll just black them out for now. Same shadow material. That shows when it's more dense what it looks like. But yeah, so that's our figure, guys. Again, there'll be, when we come to the final walk round on the figure, there may be some changes as I put more shadows or more highlights into particular areas. I'm definitely going to clean up that little spot now that I've put on the figure. But yep, that's our orange. Right, guys, that's it for this particular session. As I say, we've got through the orange. I'm going to have to tidy a bit up. I don't make no bones about that. It's quite hard painting on camera, and I'm lucky I'm not painting over the camera as a lot of people did in the early days. I've got like a tripod at the side of me, and that has overview, so that's not too bad. It's just when you're not used to it, trying to get it looking something like, and orange is always a fairly, it's more difficult to paint, I always believe, on Wargames figures than it is on display figures, because display figures you'll be glazing, and so you'll be lessening the transitions between the orange, the gradients. I find it, for the bit of orange I have painted on large scale figures, I find it a lot easier to paint it on large scale figures than actually do on the smaller stuff, because you're going more for more direct highlights, and as we all know, on light colours like this, whether it's orange, yellows, they're not always the easiest to do. So especially depends on how much, again, depth of clothing and things as well that you've got to work with. So yeah, we've done what we need to do for this one. As I say, the next one's going to be the hat, neckerchief and shoes, and we'll do all the brass work on that as well, so the buttons on the jacket and stuff get done, and the waistcoat. That was a word I was after and I couldn't find during the filming of the video. But yeah, we'll do all that good stuff, and then the last one, which tends to be, I think, a lot of the time people's favourites, tend to be faces. And I always say when I say faces sell figures, I don't mean for a financial gain. I just mean a nice face always, I don't know, always makes the figure, really gives it more of a little personality. Obviously, if it's say a French old guard behind a great moustache, or you know, you've got some figure with a like I'm painting at the moment, 30-year war with the steel helmets and the cheek pieces. There's not always a lot of face to see there, so there's not a lot to work with. But this guy's got a decent face, so we should have some fun painting him. Thanks a lot for sticking with it and taking a look. As I say, is it moving from a beginners to really just watching somebody paint? But I always find it interesting, people taking a metal, plastic or resin figure and turning it into something different. So look after yourselves. Plenty coming up. Won't go into it. You will know me. I bounce around like a squash ball. So there'll be plenty more coming up this week. Look after yourselves.